It's Mrs. Murray here. I've recently just had the pleasure of marking all your paper 2 responses to the mock exam, and I thought it might be useful if I shared a few ideas and a little bit of feedback from the kind of things that I picked up. So this particular recording is me looking at the unseen with you. Okay, so I'm going to have a look at the 24-mark question first, and then we'll have a look at the 8-mark question, but I'll do that in a separate video for you, okay? And I don't want to make these too long so that they're nice and accessible. And it's just me offering you some feedback and advice on the best way to tackle these questions, some of the things that I noticed that you did well, and some of the things that I noticed that I think that you could possibly do better to get better marks on this particular part of the section, okay, of the exam. So we are section C, unseen poetry. Answer both questions in this section. There are 2 distinct and separate questions here, 27.1 and then the further 8-mark question, 27.2. Can I ask you, please, to make sure that you treat them as 2 distinct and separate questions? Label them clearly, maybe even do them on separate pages, or leave a decent gap between the 2 of them. What some of you are doing is tending to just tack on an extra paragraph at the end of the 24-mark question. And very often when I was marking, it was really unclear which question I was marking. If the examiner can't tell whether it's 27.1 or 27.2, your response has to be referred to a senior marker, and they have to make a decision, and it's just complicated and unnecessary. They are 2 separate questions. Please treat them as such and make it absolutely clear which one you're responding to. Another thing I noticed as well, this question is worth 24 marks, okay? A fair decent amount of marks. This second one, 27.2, is only worth 8 marks. 8 valuable marks. I'm not downgrading that, but 8 marks. Many of you wrote the same amount for this response, or even more for this. So you wrote either the same amount, or some of you, because you were writing about 2 poems, I guess you thought that was easier, you actually wrote about the same amount for this, okay? Clearly, the bulk of your time has got to be spent in section C on this 24-mark question and not the 8-marker. Okay, so make sure when you're planning, you're doing your timings, you're absolutely clear that you only need to spend no more than 10 minutes on that final 8-mark question, because the marks simply aren't available for it. But you've got 24 for this one. Right, so this was the poem that you had in that particular paper. How are you going to tackle it? Well, the first thing you're going to do always is to read the question first and highlight or underline anything that you feel is important. And what you'll discover is that this question actually always tells you what the poem's about. And it says, I am offering this poem. How does the poet present the speaker's feelings about love? Ah, lovely. Okay. So straight away, I know that this poem is about love. And I haven't even got to struggle to kind of understand what I think the theme of the poem is or what the poet's writing about. I've just been told in the question, haven't I? The question is always structured in the same way. And this is the important bit. How does the poet present? Okay. So what does that mean? Well, that means the how is we're looking at what words, what phrases, what techniques, etc. the poet has used in this poem to get across their thoughts and feelings about love. So we're very focused on how the poet has done this. When I marked, some of you had some absolutely wonderful things to say about the ideas that the poet was putting across in the poem, and they were lovely. But what you weren't doing was backing that up with evidence from the poem, backing that up with some, good old-fashioned language analysis. And that's what this question is all about. You said some lovely things, but how did you know that? How had the poet given you that impression? How did you know that that's what the poet was saying about love? So yes, there was some great understanding, but you have got to back that understanding up with hard evidence, facts. How do you know? What has the poet done to make you think that's what they're saying about love? Okay, so make sure that you zoom in on those words and phrases and make it absolutely clear that you've understood exactly what it is that the poet is trying to say. Once you've read the question, I sometimes have to do this. I have to write this next to the poem, feelings about love, just so that I keep that fresh in my mind, that when I go through it, I know that that's what I'm looking for. And then what you'll do is read the poem. Read it once, just to see that you understand it, just for meaning. Then read it twice, and then maybe even read it a third time, because every time you read it, things will pop out at you and they will become clearer. And then how I tend to tackle the poem, I tend to do it in kind of like order of the poem, rather than dotting about and getting myself confused. I kind of work at the start and I work my way through and comment on the things that I notice. So once I've read it a couple of times, I'm then going to go back through and I'm going to annotate the poem. Some of you did that when I looked at your exam papers, but many of you, I noticed, hadn't done that, had made no plan. This is your plan for the unseen, isn't it? And we'll talk about how to structure that answer in just a second. But it's the annotating that is the planning, isn't it? So it's kind of a vital part of what you're doing. So don't forget to just jot down some ideas, and then that will give you something to talk about. We, with this poem, can actually start with the title. That's not always the case, but I was struck by the use of language. I am offering this poem, and I thought the use of the word offering was quite interesting there. It's something almost like a gift, isn't it? And felt that the poet was offering. When we offer something to somebody, it's this idea of presenting them with something. It's not I am giving this poem, it's an offer, isn't it? Almost suggesting that maybe the reader of the poem, whoever this poet is written for, has the chance perhaps to turn it down, because we don't have to accept offers, do we? But the poet, it makes the poet sound, I thought, quite sort of humble. They're not taking it for granted that the person is going to receive this gift that they're offering. And here's the poem. I am offering this poem to you, since I have nothing else to give. Keep it like a warm coat when winter comes to cover you, or like a pair of thick socks the cold cannot bite through. I love you. I have nothing else to give you, so it is a pot full of yellow corn to warm your belly in winter. It is a scarf for your head to wear over your hair, to tie up around your face. I love you. Keep it. Treasure this as you would if you were lost, needing direction. In the wilderness, life becomes when mature. And in the corner of your drawer, tucked away like a cabin or hogan in dense trees, come knocking, and I will answer, give you directions, and let you warm yourself by this fire, rest by this fire, and make you feel safe. I love you. It's all I have to give, and all anyone needs to live, to go on living inside, when the world outside no longer cares if you live or die. Remember, I love you. Okay. Oh, beautiful. So, how has the poet got across these ideas? Let's start at the very beginning. I am offering this poem to you, since I have nothing else to give. So again, we've got the word offering, which we could make some of it there. And we've got, again, this idea that this is all the poet has got. And many of you picked up on this idea that love is more important than material goods. This is not about giving presents or gifts or gold, etc. This is very it's all he's got to give. It's not materialistic, is it? Then we have keep it like a warm coat when winter comes to cover you. Right, as soon as I see that word like, I'm looking at keep it like a warm coat. Obviously, I've got a simile going on there. Now, you know that it's not enough when we start writing about this poem to just go, oh, look, there's a simile. We've got to analyze that and think, well, what exactly is that poem saying there? Keep it like a warm coat when winter comes to cover you. Right, I think the suggestion that we've got there is that his love is protective. Okay, it's like a warm coat. It protects the reader, the person that he's writing this to. I think maybe rather than calling that person the reader, we could call them the beloved, or the person that he loves, because this is definitely written for somebody. A few of you talked about the audience. Yeah, I think we try and sort of hone it down a bit more. If this is not written for us, is it? Yes, the poet's offering this poem to me. It's not me or you that he's in love with. It's somebody very specific, isn't it? The person that's reading this poem. And this idea that the warm coat, it's protective, or like a pair of thick socks the cold cannot bite through. All right, so the suggestion there, and we've also got this kind of like imagery of nature as well with winter, haven't we? Okay, and that nature's tough and hard, but all this person needs is love, and love is enough to keep this person warm and protected in the winter time. Even this kind of like this bite through, the love can protect. That's quite sort of how could we call that imagery? It's quite violent, I think is too strong a word, but yeah, let's go with it for now. I can't think of a better word. The sort of violent imagery of the winter, of the cold biting through. This love is enough to protect the person from that. Then we have I love you. And you'll notice, okay, that we have this repeated 3 times. Okay. Many of you picked up and called that a refrain. Very well done. It's definitely repeated. And we can also make a structural point about this. Look what it looks like. Okay. Now, I don't mean when I say look what it looks like. Some of you got some really strange ideas about sort of like turning the poem around like that and it looked a certain way, and this is what it looks like on the page. There's nothing to be gained from that. Poems aren't written to look like something. So don't be sort of like turning it around and making straight ideas. But what I can see by looking is that I love you is always separated from the stanza. Okay. Why? Why has the poet done that? Well, it makes that refrain of I love you stand out, and it emphasizes, doesn't it? Okay, and it emphasizes his love, I would say, because he's made it stand out from the rest of the stanza. When I get to the end as well, I can also see that it's his very last comment, isn't it? And the fact that he said I love you at the very end of the poem clearly is the message that he wants the beloved to take. I love you. That's the most important thing he's saying in this poem, isn't it? I have nothing else to give you. So this idea is repeated, isn't it? I have nothing else to give you. I have nothing else to give. He said that in the first stanza as well. And some of you talked about, you know, you got the impression that he's fallen on hard times, etc. I also think that he's also trying to tell us that his love is enough. Okay, this person doesn't need anything else. So it is a pot full of yellow corn to warm your belly in winter. It is a pot full of yellow corn. So it's not like there. Is it literally a pot of yellow corn? No, it's not. So we must have a metaphor there, mustn't we? A pot full of yellow corn. Right, what is a pot full of yellow corn? Well, it's food, isn't it? It's sustenance. Again, it's this idea that all the receiver needs is his love. Not only does it keep it warm, it sustains the person that's being written to. Again, it's enough, isn't it? They don't need anything more than the love. And these are the things, they're important things for life to keep us alive, aren't they? Sort of like food and warmth, the two he's chosen so far, are necessary for life, aren't they? Okay, we can't live without food and warmth, which would suggest that people can't live without love. And that's the message that we get there. It is a scarf for your head to wear over your hair to tie up around your face. Now, the idea of the scarf for your head to wear to tie up around your face, in with the idea of winter, etc. Once again, it's that idea that the poem, that the love is protection for the person that's receiving it. It's all they need. And then the refrain, I love you. Keep it. Treasure this as you would if you were lost and needing direction. Right, now straight away, I see a word like treasure. And not many of you analyse this word. And I'm not sure why, because as soon as you see that word treasure, you think, oh, that word's doing something. Well, keep it and treasure it as you would. The use of the word treasure clearly suggests to us that this poem is something precious. Remember this idea that it's the poem that's being offered. Obviously, the love is behind the poem, isn't it? But it's this repeated idea that the poem is enough to protect the receiver from all of these elemental things. So even if you were lost and needing direction in the wilderness, life becomes when mature. In the wilderness, life becomes, it's if the person gets lost, literally lost, or maybe sort of lost in life. And we could say metaphorically lost. Okay. You know, when life becomes too much, when life becomes overwhelming, remember my love, because it's protecting you. Remember that you've got this poem, that when life becomes more complicated, we can get older, that this will help you to navigate your way through. It's the love that's going to do it. And keep it caught in the corner of your drawer, tucked away like a cabin or hogan, a wooden hut or a shelter, tucked away like a cabin or hogan. Right, what does a cabin do? Well, again, it protects us, doesn't it, from the elements. A cabin is something that we live in. A cabin is something that's protecting us from outside, from nature, from the cold, etc. So we have this repeated idea that this love, this poem, is like some kind of a talisman, isn't it? Some kind of protection for the receiver of it. It's enough. Indent trees come knocking, and I will answer, give you directions, and let you warm yourself by this fire, rest by this fire, and make you feel safe. I love you. Right, so the idea of this cabin, he is in there. I will answer, I will give you directions, I will let you warm yourself and by this fire, and rest by this fire. So clearly, I think the fire is a metaphor for his love. Okay, towards this person that he's writing for, and he will provide this. And again, yeah, can we see we've got this repeated idea of protection? The love is a protection, isn't it? Okay, right, last stanza. It's all I have to give. This is the third time he's told us this, isn't it? And this repeated idea that he's literally got nothing else. But I think we come away from the poem feeling, well, there is no need for anything else. The love is enough, isn't it? And all anyone needs to live. Right, this is where we can say quite easily that Bacca, don't call him Jimmy, guys, he's not your friend. So Bacca absolutely believes, doesn't he, that love is enough. If you accept the love that he's offering, it will protect you and guide you through life. And to go on living inside when the world outside no longer cares if you live or die. Remember, the world outside is tough, isn't it? And this is kind of been, you know, it's cold, isn't it? You lose your sense of direction. I think the idea there is that life is hard, but love will see you through. That's the message of the poem there, isn't it? Love will see you through. And then, like I said, we have this last kind of idea, I love you. This is his very last comment. And it's important that it's the very last thing that's said, because that's the message that he wants the reader to take away with them. Okay. Now, so we've done a bit of annotation there. How do we answer this question? Well, I would always start with a big idea or a thesis statement, whichever one you want to call it. This doesn't have to be particularly long, but what I mean by a big idea or thesis statement with this unseen poem is that's where you write down in a sentence, maybe 2 sentences, what is this poem about? What is the poet saying about love? Right. So in the poem, I am offering, I'm not going to write out the whole of it. I am offering the poet, the poet declares or states that love is enough to see somebody through life. He offers his love as some sort of protection for the person he is offering it to. Okay. In the poem I'm offering, the poet declares that love is enough to see somebody through life. He offers his love as some sort of protection for the person he is. I don't like that. The person he is writing this for. Okay, I've got too many offers going on there. Right, so a very quick thesis statement. That sums it up in a nutshell. And you might have phrased that differently, how what you thought was going on with the poem, but something, the general idea, the big idea, the thesis statement. This poem is what the poet is offering to the person. And it's enough, isn't it? He hasn't got anything else to give, but it's enough. It's going to keep this person warm and well fed and put them back on the right track, etc., etc. So then what do we do? Well, it's the same technique as we use for everything else, isn't it? Which does keep life nice and simple. We use then a series of what, how, why, depending on which bit we're writing about. Okay, so what has the writer done? The writer uses repetition, for example. How would be the quote, as you well know, I love you. Yeah. And then why, emphasis, etc., etc. All right, and that's what we do, and we work our way through the poem. Now, probably with the annotation that I've got there, I might have too much to keep me going, to get it done in the time scale of kind of like 30 minutes. There's a lot there, but it's good to have sort of like too much there, isn't it? And not being able to get it all through. Importantly, you need to know that you're not expected to write about the entire poem. You write about kind of as much as you can in the time that you've got and the bits that you feel are the most important. If you're doing good analysis, you might only write about 4, maybe 5 different images there. If you're writing sort of like 8 or 9, it would perhaps suggest that your depth of analysis isn't deep enough. And I also noticed that some of you were getting really hung up on trying to sort of make intelligent comments about the structure of the poem. Structurally, this repeated refrain here of I love you and the fact that it's separate to the stanza, the way it stands out like that, is probably the most intelligent comment you can make about the structure. You could also perhaps say that the stanzas are irregular lengths. Why? Showing the depth of the poet's emotions. Okay. You know, it kind of suggests that his feelings aren't neat and ordered. His feelings are overwhelming, and that's reflected by, you know, the different lengths of the stanzas. It's not 4 lines, 4 lines, 4 lines. Do you see what I mean? It's more random than that, and I think it's because of the depth of the emotion that he's trying to get across there. And then that's enough about structure. I think there might be some tutorials out there where they're saying to you, oh, if you don't make lots of comments about structure, you can't get top marks. That's absolutely not true. That's not true. The mark scheme only offers structure as one of the things that you can write about. You could still do a 24-mark response and not mention structure if you're writing lots of wonderful things about language and the different techniques that the poet has used, and backing that up with intelligent comments. So don't get hung up on sort of like talking about tercets and sestets. There was lots of that and it was incorrect. It's like, if you're not sure, don't write about it. Some people trying to suggest that it was a sonnet. It's not. You don't need to identify it as a certain type of poem. Very rarely will it fall into, oh, this is a sonnet, or this is a that or the other. Really just focus on the obvious with the I love you. You can see that the stanzas are irregular lengths. Is there something intelligent that you can say about that? Yes, there is. We think it's perhaps, you know, mimicking the intensity of his emotions that he's trying to get out. And then that quite probably is enough. Then I would really be focusing on, you know, in every single stanza, we've got some kind of technique. We've got a metaphor, or we've got a word like treasure, or we've got a simile. Don't get hung up as well on, oh, I've got to label it a simile, or I've got to label it a metaphor. Treasure this as you would as if you were lost. Right. We don't need to label the word treasure with, oh, it's a this or it's a that, but just think about the meaning of it. What is it suggesting about it? Well, it suggests that it's precious, doesn't it? All right. So, you know, to label something wrong isn't helping you, but please don't forget that words are techniques used by poets. I am offering this poem. It's the words that we were looking at there. We're not labeling it as, you know, a this or a that or the other. But it is just an interesting word there, the offering this. You know, like I said, it makes the kind of like the giver of the poem sound quite humble, doesn't it? This is what I've got, this is all I've got, and this is what I'm giving you. And it's a beautiful gift, and it will see you through life. Accept this, and it will keep, my love will keep you warm, and my love will keep you well fed. My love will help you to find your way in life. And when life is getting really hard and others don't care, I will. I love you, he says, doesn't he? Okay. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight in how you could have responded to that particular question. I'm going to go on and make one for the 8 marker as well, and I'll make videos for each of the questions on that paper and any others that I can do as well. So your teachers will let you know when I've done them, and I'll get them onto the Washwood Heath YouTube channel. So please don't forget about that, will you? Okay, that's really important. We've got quite a few little videos up there, so make sure that you have a look at them and you use them. All right, guys, so I will, oh crikey, you've seen all my screens here because I can't get back to where I want to. Bear with me, and I'll see you all soon, and you take care. Hey, I was just in the middle of recording a bloody video then. Yeah, yeah.